In this video, we will be reviewing for your Unit 7 test on right triangles. So the first thing that we learned in Unit 7 about right triangles was a Pythagorean theorem, which you can use to solve for missing sides when you know two of the sides. And the important thing to know when you're doing the Pythagorean theorem is that your C is always your hypotenuse, which is always directly across from the 90-degree angle. So here I'm going to plug into a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So for a and b, it doesn't matter which order you use those numbers. So I have 5 squared plus 12 squared equals c squared, and I'm going to keep solving for c. So 5 squared is 25, and 12 squared is 144. That adds up to 169. And then at the very end there, you need to square root it to get the length of that side by itself. So to get our answer, we're going to do square root of 169, which comes out to 13. So the answer to this problem for the missing side would be 13. In this next problem, we're also finding the length of the missing side. So first, I'm going to identify my hypotenuse. Here, my hypotenuse, or my C, is 82. So that means we're finding one of the other sides, the A or B. And it doesn't matter which one you put where. So I'm going to call this A, I'll let this one be A. So A squared plus 18 squared equals 82 squared. So if I do 18 squared on my calculator, that comes out to 324. And if I do 82 squared, that comes out to 6,724. Now here, this one's different because these numbers are not on the same side, so you can't add them. So instead of adding, you're actually going to subtract. So we get A squared equals 6,400 or 6,400. And at the very end, you would square root it to get your final answer. So the square root of 6,400 is 80. So our answer here for the missing side would be 80. This next question, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to classify a triangle. So when you're doing this, remember your C needs to be your largest side. So I'm going to plug in. So when you're doing this, instead of having A squared plus B squared equals C squared, you put C squared in front. So C squared equals A squared plus B squared. And then A and B can be any two letters. Here, C, though, has to be the largest side. I'm going to start to simplify this. So if I do 82 squared, that comes out to 6,724. 13 squared is 169. And 80 squared is 6,400. Now, if I add those together, that comes out to 6,569. So now what you do, you notice these are not equal. So you want to check how they compare. So 6,724 is actually greater than 6,569. So when you're classifying your triangles, if it's greater, it's going to be an obtuse triangle. Now, just to summarize some notes here. So when you're doing this, if C squared is greater than A squared plus B squared, it's obtuse. If C squared is less than A squared plus B squared, then it's acute. Remember, obtuse angles are greater than 90, acute are less than 90. And if C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared, then it's a right triangle. And that's why the Pythagorean theorem mainly works for right triangles. This next question is the same type of problem. So here we're going to classify the triangle with these side lengths. So if I look here, my biggest side is 25. So that has to be my C. A and B can be the two other sides. I'm going to plug in. So I have 25 squared equals 20 squared plus 15 squared. 25 squared is 625. 20 squared is 400. And 15 squared is 225. So if I add those, I get 625. For this particular problem, these ones are equal. So since they're equal, it's a right triangle. We're moving on now to the 45, 45, 90 triangles. Always check your angles. So since this is a 45, 45, 90, I'm able to use the rules for 45, 45, 90. And here we want to find the length of x. So if you look at x, it's actually across the 90 degrees. So it's the hypotenuse. So we're going to use the formula for hypotenuse, which is equal to leg times square root of 2. Here our leg is 5. So our answer is going to be 5 square root of 2. In our next question, we're also looking at a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Here, the 8 square root of 2 is the hypotenuse, and they want us to find the length of x, which is one of the legs. So we're going to have to use the formula for leg, which is equal to hypotenuse divided by 2, which is 8 square root of 2 divided by 2. Here, if you divide 8 by 2, you get 4. So our answer for the leg is going to be 4 square root of 2. Actually, I made a little mistake here. Sorry about that. On this denominator, it should actually be a square root of 2. Sorry about that. So I should be dividing by square root of 2. So on this one, since we have a square root of 2 on the top and on the bottom, they actually cancel. So you're just left with 8. So my leg here would be equal to 8. On the next problem, we're finding the length of A. So A would be the hypotenuse here. And this one is also a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So we want to know the hypotenuse, and they gave us a leg. So since we want to know the hypotenuse, we're going to use the formula for hypotenuse, which is leg times square root of 2. Our leg is 2 root 2, so we're going to multiply that times square root of 2. And we had learned that anytime you're doing square root of 2 times square root of 2, that's equal to 2. So here, that would be equal to 2. So this problem becomes 2 times 2, or 4. So the length of the hypotenuse would be 4. Now we're moving on to the 30, 60, 90 triangles. So this time we're solving for the length of U and V on this 30, 60, 90 triangle. U is my hypotenuse because it's across from the 90. So 4 would be my short leg and V would be my long leg. So I'm going to find the hypotenuse first. So I'm going to use the hypotenuse equals 2 times the short leg. So if I do 2 times 4, that comes out to 8. So here U is equal to 8. Next, I'm going to find my long leg. The formula for long leg is short leg times square root of 3. And our short leg was 4. So our answer for the long leg is going to be 4 square root of 3. So when you know the short leg, it's really simple. You just plug it into those formulas. Question 9 is also a 30, 60, 90 triangle. This time they only want us to find the length of y. So here 3 is our hypotenuse. That makes y our short leg. So we need to use one of the formulas for short leg, but there's 2. We need to make sure we're using the one that has hypotenuse in it. So we're doing short leg equals hypotenuse divided by 2. So 3 divided by 2, if you write that as a decimal, it comes out to about 1.5. Our next example is another 30, 60, 90 triangle. Here we're finding x. So if we identify our hypotenuse, it would be y. So x would be our short leg and 6 would be our long leg. And we want to know x, so we want to know the short leg. So we're going to use one of the formulas for short leg. Here we don't know the hypotenuse. We know the long leg is 6. So we want to use the formula that has the long leg since we know what number to plug in there. So it would be 6 divided by square root of 3. And then remember, you do not want to leave a square root in your denominator. So to get rid of this, I'm going to multiply by root 3 over root 3. On my numerator, I get 6 square root of 3. And then remember, and I'm going to make a little note on the side, we learned that square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 3. So on the denominator, I'm going to put a 3. And at the very end, you can divide their big numbers, 6 and 3, the ones that aren't in the square root. So this one comes out to 2 square root of 3 for the length of that short leg. This video is meant to help you review for your Unit 7 test. You can watch it as many times as you need. You can also look at the solutions to this review that I uploaded as well.